This is Mark Bleckman, Chair of the Newbury Human Resources Board, confirming this meeting of the Classification Subcommittee. Let me confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Diane Doyle, please affirm in the, please respond in the affirmative when I mention your name. Diane Doyle.
Here.
Tracy Blaze.
Yes.
John Ferrara.
Yes.
And Mark Bleckman. Thank you. Don't anticipate any other speakers on the agenda. Good morning. This open meeting of the Newbury Human Resources Classification Subcommittee Group is being conducted virtually, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, and the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. The order, which you can find posted on the town's website, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not, however, ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment as it is not a public hearing. For this meeting, the Newbury Human Resources Board Subcommittee is convening by Zoom meeting link as posted on the agenda of the town's website. All of the materials for this meeting, except any executive session materials, are available on the website, and we recommend the members and the public follow the agenda as posted on the website. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of board members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Given the fact that there are just the four of us today, I think we can dispense with the muting. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and be sure to state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. With that in mind, is there a motion to open the meeting?
Motion.
Second,
Yes.
any discussion?
No.
All in favor, Diane Doyle,
Yes.
John Ferrara,
Yes.
Mark Bleckman, yes. With that, we are open. Welcome, Tracy, to the Classification Subcommittee. As we know from previous subcommittee meetings, Tracy has requested that we take the opportunity to review what is a new job description and as such to look and see how, if at all, it may impact in the classification system for the town of Newbury. Tracy's asked for our time this morning. We're happy to oblige. And with that, let me just take a moment and give Tracy the floor, and she can share just a couple of thoughts about what brings us here today. Tracy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we at the last HR board meeting, I spoke to you a little bit about the many changes that we've had, the turnover in town, and how well the classification system has served us. This position is a relatively new position. It evolved internally. We didn't have an IT director until I believe 2016. We had an in-house person who had the qualifications and the training and the skills and the education to work in that field, and she kind of evolved into the position. So in 2016, when we first wrote the job description, we did capture a lot of the tasks that Susan Noyce was engaged in. But since then, it's evolved a little bit in that we've added additional responsibilities, some supervisory in nature, some are outside of the scope of what you would normally see in an IT director or IT manager job description. It's a little more all encompassing, and I think that tends to happen when you're in a smaller community. So I thought now that she's moved on to another job opportunity, this would be a good time to kind of get our eyes on it and just update it accordingly.
Okay, and it looks like it's been, if I recall from the original job description, this is just shy of 5 years since the last time it was classified. It was classified in, looks like May of 2016.
Yes.
So we're
Yes.
coming up on 5 years now. And I think, as a best practice, significant positions of responsibility should be reviewed probably every 3 to 5 years anyways. I think we may have talked about it in the past. And if it turns out that responsibilities have remained, stationary, if you will, then obviously the classification doesn't change. But if perhaps, as the case here, if responsibilities have increased, in some cases significantly so, then we want to make sure that we are current with how the classification maps to the responsibilities and duties. So those are my thoughts. John, any thoughts before we get started with the factors from you?
No, just I've made notes in the text and come to it when we get there.
Okay, thanks. Diane, how about you?
The only thing I would ask is, and I don't have it in front of me, the actual title for the position, Tracy?
It's IT Communications Program Manager.
Okay, and you still feel that captures when we look at the MMA data, how it maps up?
I mean, if you want to, there's all sorts of titles. You can change it to MIS director, you can change it to IT director, you can change it to IT manager. I don't think,
Anonymous. You feel
yeah,
like-
I think, I mean, if
I'm just asking the question if we're gonna update the job description, if you feel that there's any movement there that's needed.
do you have a suggestion, or I'm not sure.
I was just looking at the MMA data that was available. Did you want to map it to something closer to that in terms of like IT director or MIS director, or no?
I'm not opposed to it at all.
Can I make a suggestion? Why don't we hold on that until we go through the factors? That
Okay.
might give us some guidance as to whether, IT/communications program manager is a fit for the breadth of responsibilities. And if not, we could talk about playing with it. But for now,
Okay.
We probably don't have enough. Probably haven't had enough discussion to determine if that's still the right role. I think that was correct me if I'm wrong, Tracy, that was the existing title. Is that right?
That's the existing title,
Yeah,
correct?
that's what I thought. Okay. And by communications, just to clarify, are you referring to when you say communications, are you referring to technical communications or the part of the job where you'd like somebody to be kind of an outward facing member of the administration to the public and
Correct. The social
communicating in that sense?
media,
Okay.
whatever form
That's-
that comes in, yes.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, with that in mind, let me just cover one other thing, and I'll open this up first to John. John, as you read through the job description, is there anything that you would like to flag in advance of starting going through the factors that was either a question you had or, a comment you wanted to make?
Like I wrote the word right away that I heard the other day from Tracy, which is turnover, and all of the myriad reasons that we're experiencing that. And I'm sure that we're not wholly alone. It just speaks clarion level. When you look at the knowledge and skills experience required, just the idea of how you choose somebody by recommendation or by agency, it speaks to growing from within.
Sorry, John, it speaks to what?
Speaks to growing somebody of this quality from within.
Oh, right.
Even if they're crossing departments. In other words, most of the traits that we're looking for, other than the technical trait specific, speaks to service and to capability. And some of these, when you think about the position this person is going to entertain, she's crossing or he's crossing a whole lot of avenues amongst many departments. This is going to have to be one very special communicator.
Yeah, no question. No question.
It just, I mean, I think about corporate headquarters that I've experienced as a closely held business advisor for 40 years. Most of the internal positions that I witnessed and I saw shuffling within most of the companies closely held, as well as a few public companies, they all came across rather than from outside.
Right.
And we're a town, we're different. And I don't know what the MMA standards are, but it jumps out at me. And I also made a note on the old and the new physical demands. I'm wondering exactly what is crawling.
Well, it's funny you say that, because when I was reviewing it for amendment, I kind of chuckled, and I absolutely left it in there because you should take a tour of the existing location, which is in the basement of the former town hall on High Road. I guess you'd call it the IT room, for lack of a better word. You physically, if you're involved with all the wiring and doing things over there, the way they had furniture and equipment stacked up, you had to crawl to get underneath and behind. So it has been cleaned up. They did a lot of housekeeping over there in preparation for their move to the new PD. So it's a little bit easier to maneuver in there, but yeah, crawling is not out of the realm of what they're responsible for doing.
And I can share with you that on numerous occasions over my many years in business, I've been responsible for the creation of and outfitting of new office space. And it doesn't have to be the dungeon at the old town hall. It could just as easily be a shiny new office building in a high rise. And your technology person is on his or her knees wiring
the desk.
below workstations. It is having good knees, or at least good knee pads, is a requirement of the job, no question. So thank you, John. Anything else that you wanted to share before we get started? John, did we lose your audio just now? I'm sorry.
Probably.
Oh, there you are. You're all set now. Okay. Diane, how about you? Any other thoughts on the job description before we get started?
No.
Okay. Thank you. The only one I had was, I just asked her, I'm assuming, Tracy, that in the first page under information technology, the supervises the PEG access function for the town. Is that one of the new responsibilities? I don't recall seeing that on the old.
It is in Newbury. Well, in some communities, when you are in receipt of PEG access money as part of your, in our case, Comcast contract,
Right.
some communities have established a 501c3, a not-for-profit, work with a not-for-profit agency. I shouldn't say they establish it, because the town doesn't establish it. It's homegrown.
Right.
And you would interact with them in that we would provide them funding to run your PEG access, your studio, your programming, your, the equipment purchases, the inventorying, the recording of community events, the recording of educational events, town government events. We do not have one as of yet. There's been discussion over the years that perhaps, a group of people, individuals would want to do that. At this point, it's been, we did hire a person that does a lot of the physical, recording. I don't know if any of you have met Ethan Cohen, but he is working and doing some of that work for us. But it's been a little bit disjointed. He kind of reports to me, but I'm not really, that's not my world. I can't provide him a lot of direction. Right now, we're involved in replacing all of our equipment because it's become so outdated. My expectation is that the new person would oversee Ethan would supervise and direct Ethan, and his position would be in charge of all the equipment, because the equipment gets lent out as well. We're
Right.
also working with the Triton superintendent to start a program in which they would send us their students who are interested in that world. They would send them over to us and they can work with us, like a paid internship.
Right.
So it would be supervision of Ethan in-house, and then the student body as well, who would be interning for us. I'm trying to think what else they do. They determine all the programming. They're responsible for recordings, rebroadcasting, working with the vendors, working with Comcast when there are problems, all of the networking and everything that goes with that world. But it's been a little disconnected here, the way it
Right.
currently operates. And
Okay.
I hope this would smooth things out a little bit.
Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. With that in mind, if there's no objection, let's go right into the first factor. And Diane, thank you in advance. I know as always you are the keeper of the grid here.
Yes.
The Chinese algebra, as I describe it. Thank you in advance for that, and we'll see where it takes us. So our first job factor is complexity of both judgment and decision-making. This factor considers, all of the activities performed and, how complex they may be, what's the degree of judgment and or decision-making that this individual will be responsible for. And if you look at the ranking, as is, I think, always the case, this factor goes from a ranking of a 1, which is highly repetitive, simple tasks. Decisions are rarely required of this individual. Number 2 is routines, occasional exceptions are encountered, makes recommendations on an as-needed basis, but typically most of the work consists of a variety of tasks that are within standard procedures. 3 is somewhat complex. I don't have to go through each one of these individually. I think everyone understands the nature of them. Somewhat complex. 4 is complex. 5 is highly diverse and complex. Planning, analysis, coordination of major interrelated activities, making decisions where in some cases established policies are inadequate, all the way up to the highest level, which is policy formulation, works on the formulation of broad policies and long-term programs, makes decisions that serve as guides and directors for the town. And as a reminder, as always, our history in these classification subcommittees is that if we're faced with the dilemma of something between something not being an apple or an orange, we always have an opportunity to consider it a 2.5 or a 4.5 as opposed to a 4 or a 5. We certainly have done that in the past as precedent, and we can do it if needed here. So Tracy, let me throw that open to you in terms of your perception of where this sits on the complexity of judgment and decision-making grid.
I had this one as a 6, and my rationale was it's extremely technical, extremely complex. They do write, for example, right now, just before Susan left, she was writing policy documents for email and cybersecurity. So although she wouldn't have the final say, any policies have to be approved by the select board
Right.
before implementation. She was certainly formulating them.
She was formulating, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, with some of these factors, if people recall, we often refer to, is it a one-off versus a day-to-day activity? In this particular factor, it's fair to say that no one is doing policy level work every day.
No.
And so what we typically have looked at is, is this person occasionally or perhaps often involved in the creation of policies that, as Tracy has just mentioned, may have to go before the select board, but this person is responsible for the creation, the formulation, the articulation of those policies, and in some cases, the management of those policies going forward. So it seems reasonable to me. John, I would ask you what your thoughts are on this.
Well, I agree thoroughly. My opening comment was that the knowledge, skills, and experience required, this is a department head level work. And when you think about the cross-pollination from the police department to the library to all of the elements within the town's governance, this person is going to have to be able to communicate with all of her contemporaries. My guess, it probably should be as equals.
Okay, thank you. Diane, your thoughts?
I mean, hearing Tracy talk more about the position and how diverse and how relevant it is to the overall policies of the town, I can see where it would be closer to a 5 or a 6.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I think, again, because, as Tracy said, this person is responsible for, if you look at the 2 bullets under 6, works on the formulation of broad policies and long-term programs and makes decisions that serve as guides and directors for the town.
right.
Seems to me that.
One other, if I may interject.
Yep, go ahead, John.
The complication, I know we have an IT director for the agency system, which now stretches to 3 states and in 5 locations. And one of the recommendations I made 2 winters ago, and it has come to have been a lifesaver, is that this is so complicated and so remarkably singular that there needs to be an immediate assistant and a rigorous training program, so that if whomever takes the position goes down for whatever reason, family, illness, et al., somebody needs to be able to be seamless step in on the very next morning, very next hour. So you add to that encompassing rating of classification, teacher, really good assistant teaching. Somebody needs to be mentored that is going to be as capable as he or she.
Thank you, John. Yeah, we'll probably get to that also down the road in one of the other factors. So, okay, so it looks like we're sitting at a 6 for as a policy formulation and deliverance individual. It seems comfortable being a 6. We're in agreement with that.
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and Mark, yes. Thank you. Next factor is education. This is something we typically move through pretty quickly. It's pretty straightforward. It's a 1, which is a junior high school, a high school person up to grade 11. 2 is a high school graduate. 3 is some training beyond high school. 4 is completion of a 2-year degree. 5 is a bachelor's degree. 6 is advanced studies above and beyond a bachelor's degree. Tracy, you've got an indicator here in the job description that you have. Would you describe it as a strong preference for a bachelor's degree, a prerequisite, something in between?
I would say, going out to the competitive market as we are, I would have an extremely strong preference for a bachelor's degree. I would note to you the people who were, going through the resumes and reviewing them and interviewing the candidates. I think 4 out of the 5 people that I considered as capable of doing the job all had master's degrees. They all had advanced degrees.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it lists the bachelor's here, so there may be a preference, but it lists the bachelor's in the job description, and given the applicant pool that's out there and what you've seen so far, bachelor's degree seems like a reasonable expectation. Diane, your thoughts?
I would agree.
John, your thoughts?
The master study for IT is a giant plus, and there's always the consideration for a full bachelor's, as long as the studies and experience merits the IT credential.
Okay. And Tracy, fair to say that other certifications are, would be gravy, but not requirements?
Correct.
Okay. All right, given that, let's take an official vote on that. It looks like we're at a 5. John Nelson, John Ferrara.
So that's quite all right. A lot of people call me Nelly. Just before we go to the yay or nay, I'm reading that education and certification required. So we're setting the standard at bachelor's, no less. Yay or nay? Or am I misreading that?
No, it's an appropriate question to ask. My recollection is in previous job descriptions that I've looked at, whether it's an associate's or a bachelor's degree, I think the language is something like bachelor's degree in a related field strongly preferred or preferred. This doesn't say preferred or required. I guess, Tracy, fair to ask you that question?
Well, the classification, though, it does say education and or certification required. I mean, if I had a circumstance where someone, perhaps like you described earlier, that was coming up through the ranks, that maybe didn't have a bachelor's but had an associate, something along those lines, I would certainly consider them. I think I would come to you guys where it was outside of the requirement, and say, okay, but you've got to continue on in your you know, education.
As a requirement of the offer, in other words.
Right.
You want
But
to progress in the next 12 to 18 months towards your bachelor's, that kind of thing.
exactly, but I feel comfortable having it as a requirement.
Okay. John, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Do we ever give support from the town resource to help people with tuitions for advanced education within?
We
their
do
realm?
not, we don't have any budgets that would allow you for advancing your degrees. We do provide training for technical expertise. For example, Diane is a certified Massachusetts collector and a certified Massachusetts treasurer. That's a degree program, well, a certification program that you work towards, that the town will contribute for that training. We have expenses for those, you know, technical trainings, but not for a degree, not for an educational degree, so.
Okay. John, are you comfortable making a decision based on that
Yes, I am.
answer? Okay.
Yes.
Let me open it up then. John, do you agree with I think we said a 5 here? A 5, is that, yeah, bachelor's degree? Diane?
Yes.
And Mark Leckman, yes. Okay, that's a 5. Thank you. Next factor is experience. Considers the time required to develop the necessary skills and expertise to perform the job duties and responsibilities. You know what, let me just stop for a second. I apologize. I mentioned earlier that I'd share a couple of Tony's thoughts. You know, unfortunately, at the last second, he wasn't able to join us, but, you know, he just wanted me to share that he too, as we've been talking about here, noted the fact that this is, for lack of a better term, an all-encompassing role that, you know, we recognize in a small office environment, especially in a municipality. It's not unusual for somebody to wear more than one hat, and that would certainly be the case here. And you know, he shared, and I would agree that it will be interesting to see whether the you know, whoever is hired in this role can bring you know, equal amount of talent or education, experience, if not talent, in both sides of the equation here, the technical side and the ability to communicate effectively. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. We know that. I've certainly known plenty of technology people who are very adept at communicating with the end users, with the broader community, explaining things to make it easy for the rest of us to understand, and more importantly, to share information that puts people at ease. And so it'll be interesting to see, given the breadth of these responsibilities, how somebody can grow into one side of the role. I assume the technology piece is a given, you know, whether they will come with the requisite communications or outward communications background, that remains to be seen, depends on the candidate pool. But so again, Tony, just wanted to share those thoughts as well, that it's a very encompassing role. So I'm sorry, back to experience. This factor considers the time required to develop the necessary skills and expertise to perform the job duties. Experience is defined as the length of time required to acquire the minimum skills necessary to fulfill duties and responsibilities. Years of experience are often used in the recruiting process. When assessing the required amount of experience, consider the complexity of the issues faced and the amount of judgment exercise. Generally speaking, the more judgment exercise, the more experience is required. And the factors go from 1 to 6. 1 is an individual with 1 to 6 months of relevant experience. A 3 is somebody with 1 to 3 years of experience. A 5 is someone with 7 to 10 years experience. And a 6 is more than 10 years of experience. And in this job description, Tracy, you've described this as 5 to 7 years of prior experience with technical support, supervisory role preferred.
Yes, and I put it at 4.5.
4.5 would in fact put us right in the middle of the grid. A number 4 is 4 to 6 years experience. A number 5 is 7 to 10 years. So 5 to 7 would in fact make it a 4.5. Let me open this up for discussion. Diane Doyle?
I would agree. I have nothing to add.
Okay, John Ferrara?
Again, I agree.
Okay, and Mark Blackman, I will agree as well. You wouldn't go one way or the other. And I mean, I assume that if somebody had 4.5 or 80 or something, that's within the realm. But based upon what you've seen and what your wishes are, 5 to 7 is the right range.
I think so, yes.
Okay, then let's vote on whether a 4.5 is appropriate. John Ferrara,
Yay.
Diane Doyle,
Yes.
Mark Leckman, yes. Thank you. Next factor is independent action. And in parentheses, taking initiative. Independent action refers to the initiative required to perform the duties and responsibilities of the job effectively. This also considers the creativity and original thought required by the job and the amount of direction and control received from the supervisor, which in this case would be Tracy, or by standard practices and precedents. And the ranking, as is always, goes from a 1 to a 6. Some examples, a 1 would be this person works under close supervision, received details, instructions, and procedures verbally or in writing, no latitude to make changes in his or her work, refers all but the most routine questions or problems to the supervisor. A 2 is works under less frequent supervision. A 3 is works under occasional supervision. A 4 is works within general guidance and direction, plans and carries out plans and activities to attain defined objectives, applies policies or standards widely accepted within the occupation or the profession, and the assignments may involve creative work and or innovation. A 5, this person would work independently on general assignments, plans and carries out broad assignments of a major department, often involving other related activities and disciplines, or takes action without reference to supervisors except when policy changes are required, major investments are involved, or long-term programs are affected. A 6 works independently on a wide range of administrative and policy-making activities. This person plans and carries out major programs and plans for the entire town. Employees' work is checked only through consultation and agreement with others, and typically does not receive directions on a regular basis. Tracy, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I went back and forth with this one. I absolutely a 5, no doubt. Even, I would have no problem classifying it as a 6. The only reason I went between 5.5 and 6, the person doesn't typically receive directions other than I would say to Susan, okay, our PEG access equipment is outdated. We can't replace it. It's malfunctioning. We need to replace the new equipment. I mean, that's the directive she would get. She would have to do the procurement. She would have to study and analyze the best equipment for what we do. She'd make recommendations on what we're going to purchase. She would be responsible for working with the vendors, coordinating installation. And then the next step is training all of us on how to utilize it. So, you know, there isn't a lot of guidance that I can provide to this individual in terms of saying where, you know, if it was the town accountant and it was the software, I could say, oh yeah, we need to look into SoftWrite versus, you know, another program, because I'm very familiar with that. But in this world, in terms of directives, I might say, you know, purchase the new equipment, but that's the end of my participation in it.
Right.
So I'd be comfortable anywhere between the 5 and the 6. I could probably feel comfortable justifying a 6, but anywhere within those two, I would see this position falling in.
Tracy, quick question.
Mm.
When you think about this individual and his or her policy making policy formulation responsibilities, how, if at all, would this person's policy making judgment or decision differ from others among your senior staff who are also at the policy making level? Well, who are the other policy making level people on your team? Is that PD and FD or?
PD, FD, there's limited policy making at some of the other levels. For example, in the last few years when we've looked at, Diane, help me, the last policy we just did with the trust funds and things like that. I mean, I would look to Diane and her expertise, and we'd pull something together. I think the reason I struggle with this position a little more is because it's outside of my realm of knowledge. Like Diane and I can sit down, and I'm very familiar with the role, the assessors, the accountant, the finances, even inspectional services. I feel like I have a real strong grasp on those, but the technical aspect of the IT role is not my strength, I guess.
Right.
So
Well,
I
let
have
me
a
ask
lot
the
more
question.
dependence.
Let me ask the question another way.
Yeah.
Would you expect that this person would have the same level of, again, for lack of a better term, autonomy in policy creation that you give to the fire chief and or the police chief?
Yes.
Would you expect the same
Yes.
level of autonomy in policy creation?
Yes.
Okay. And Diane, help me. Are the FD and PD are the chiefs at the 6 level in this factor?
They are both at a 6.
They're both at a 6. Okay. And in your mind, the same level of autonomy, because that's what I'm focused on. The last bullet item 5 says takes action without reference to supervisors except when policy changes are required, which would suggest to me that this person would have to go to you if it was a 5 before he or she took on any policy making judgments. And you're saying that's not the case, that they would be independent in that regard. Similar to what you give to the PD and the FD. Am I reading that right?
Therein lies the 5.5, I guess.
Okay.
I would expect to collaborate.
You would. Okay.
Yes.
Perhaps a little bit more so than with the others.
Than with the
Okay,
other two.
good. That's
Yes.
exactly what I
Yes.
wanted to know. Okay.
Yep.
John, thoughts, questions?
When I read this morning, oddly, I used the same language you did, autonomous command. And I read duties and responsibilities, oversee, workshops, supervise, first point contact, troubleshoot, oversee planning and implementation. That to me almost seems policy responsibility. Oversee scheduling of employee training, council on aging, library, town offices, police, PD, FD, implementation of changes. That's a lot of communication skills and a lot of relationship skills. Third-party service providers, that's a mystery in itself. Internet, photocopiers, all of it. And then office security, town meeting technology, and given the pandemic we've all come through, that's going to be incredibly important going forward because of at a million vaccinations a week or
Yeah.
less. It's going to take us 3.5 years to get a clean population.
Right.
And
Well, when you look
so
at the three bullet items,
I would almost want to give him a 6, but then I hear the final policy checklist. If you're telling me that the chief of the fire and chief of the police are the only two people that have total autonomy, policy change on their own, and this person will have to pass muster at what level? Each department that he or she is reporting to, or Tracy's desk?
I would anticipate at my level, yeah.
thank
So
you,
that
John.
speaks to your 5.5 or your vacillation from 6.
I would agree. I mean, if we look at the 3 bullet items under 6, one is plans and carries out major programs and plans for the entire town. It
Yes.
sounds like we check that box.
Yep.
Employees' work is checked only through consultation and agreement with others. Tracy, you're not hovering here,
No,
right? And 3, typically does not receive directions on a regular basis, which Tracy's already indicated. So if you look at those 3 bullet items, you could justify a 6. But then when you go back to the last bullet item in 5, which talks
Right.
about the policy level, it doesn't quite get there. So I would, my sense is I would agree that the 5.5 is probably justified here. That it comes as close to a 6 as you can, but it's not quite there. So let me open this up to final thoughts. Diane, 5.5 versus 6? Or 5 for that matter. I don't want to put worse than anybody's, but 5, 5.5, 6?
I think it's definitely higher than a 5. I was leaning towards a 5.5. I did take a look at the factors. So there are other positions that are at a 6. You had asked specifically about the fire chief and the chief of police. Obviously, the town administrator is at a 6. The public works director is at a 6. The town planner is at a 6. So my point that I would just put out there for thought is we've checked all the boxes in 6. The middle point being employees' work is checked only through consultation and agreement with others. So obviously, before she did anything, she would look to Tracy for sort of the final blessing. And I also think that there's a check and balance, and Tracy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we have an independent consultant that also would weigh in if she were to do something that didn't make sense, that kind of maybe is a second set of eyes for you in that area. So I originally was thinking of 5.5. I'm almost leaning towards a 6, but I see the value. I mean, I think at this point we're relatively within the same ballpark, but those would be my thoughts.
Okay. Thank you, Diane. If there are no other thoughts, I'll ask to take a vote on it. And why don't we, this is a close one, so why don't we vote on whether each of us believes it's a 5.5 or a 6? Is that fair?
And we can also go back to it if in fact we get very close to a rating at the end that we think we could also come back and revisit it. So.
Okay, that's fine. So Diane, what would be your vote?
I would go with a 6.
Thank you. John Ferrara
6.
and Mark Leckman, I would keep it as a 5.5. And so we've got a majority decision here. Let's put it down as a 6. Thank you. Next factor is consequence of errors. This factor assesses the likelihood and the probable effect of errors on the job, and it considers who was affected, Is it just a unit within the town? Within a department? Is it an entire department? Is it the town? Or is it the public? What is the extent of losses to the town which could result from inappropriate decisions or judgments? Is this a normal rather than an extreme error? However, the possibility of serious consequences exists. How easy is the error to correct? Those are some of the things that sit below the factor. And the ranking, as always, is a 1 through a 6. Number 1 is errors are readily detected. The cost and the impact is minimal. The errors are easily corrected. It may cause loss of credibility just to the individual. 2 is errors are probably detected by others within the work area, but the likelihood is it stays within the work area and that there might be a slight loss of credibility to the unit or the department. 3 is errors affect the work of others, but are not generally damaging to the town. Errors are detected and corrected before they become serious. Errors may cause a loss of significant amount of time. It could delay operations, validity of records, data, so forth. Errors may have an adverse impact on the public and/or employee relations. 4 is errors cause substantial identifiable losses, and we can get into that. Number 5 is errors cause serious short-term breakdowns, may cause serious delays in services, may cause commitment or withholding of funds, inadequate analysis or poor planning. And number 6 is errors may cause long-term negative consequences to the town. They may cause terminal losses with little opportunity to correct the error once it's made, except over a long period of time and at great cost. It may cause major loss of department or town prestige because results become public, and it may cause fatal or incapacitating injury. We would certainly hope it doesn't do that. Tracy, your thoughts?
Yeah, initially I had a 6 until I read the last bullet point, and it's sometimes I struggle with the language in the rankings, but certainly between a 5 and a 6. All of the other bullet points, I mean, if you have an IT issue and that the website goes down for an extended period of time, there's nothing more public than those types of issues, and it does make all of us look very bad if we can't correct it quickly, things like that. But I don't know, those things don't happen frequently, but the responsibility with ensuring that it doesn't happen lies with this role. So again, I'm between the 5 and the 6, certainly.
Yeah, one thing I should mention here, and again, it's something we've always dealt with, we have to bear in mind that regardless of what the factor is and how we rate it, a 3, a 5, a 6, or 1, we've determined in the past that it's often difficult for the duties and responsibilities of that job to hit every one of the bullet items within that classification. And so what we look at is, what's the norm?
Okay.
What's the likelihood on a day-to-day basis or a week-to-week, a month-to-month basis that these things might occur? So for me, this is a key one for me. If I were to look at the 6 here, there are 3 bullet items. One is may cause major loss of department or town prestige because the results become public. That would clearly be the case here.
Right.
But if I look at the other 2 bullet items, may cause fatal or incapacitating injury, that certainly is not going to happen with this role, but I can't imagine. And it may cause terminal losses with little opportunity to correct the error once made. As difficult as these errors may be, I don't see any situation here where an error that's made can't be corrected. It's not like a building has blown up. It may seem like it at the moment, but in other words, correct me if I'm wrong, Tracy, as catastrophic as a problem may be short term, maybe the system goes down for a day or 2, the errors can be corrected. It's not terminal. Is that fair?
Agreed, unless, the only thing I could think of that would be terminal is backup malfunctioning and we get hit with ransomware and we say, oh, don't worry about it, we've got the backup, and then the backup didn't work.
Mhm.
So everything's lost, something like that. But no, I agree with what you're saying, and that's why I was between the two.
Toggling, yeah, okay, thank you. Diane, your thoughts on that?
I was leaning, I was definitely not at a 6. Again, because of that last bullet point, I was somewhere between a 4 and a 5. But in today's environment with all of the things, I would definitely probably lean towards a 5.
Thank you. John, your thoughts?
What would move me back to 6 would be responsibilities for the remarkably resonant requirement for total and uninterrupted communication with the fire department and the police department. Those are two places where there can be disruption in the potential for harm. Obviously, the backup loss, if it's permanent and the cloud doesn't rescue whatever the mistake was, then the town's lost its history.
Yeah. John, help me with that a little bit. When you say a 6 might relate to the connectivity between this role and the FD and the PD, what are you referring to?
It's just the idea that if their systems go down because of a mistake made in any element with coordination of their ability to communicate together with the state, with the federal agencies, and within their own departments.
Okay.
There's a whole lot of cross-reference and responsibility that goes with both of them.
Yeah, that's a great point, John. I hadn't considered that at all. Tracy, let me ask you to speak to this if you can. And I'm a layperson here, so I guess I'm not sure even what I'm asking. But given the technology that this person is responsible for, is there the potential that if our system goes down, meaning the town system, that it somehow has an impact on the ability for either the FD or the PD to communicate effectively?
There are redundancies built into them naturally, as you would expect as public safety agencies. And a lot of their communications, like if you think of something like their 911 system, that's not administered by us, that's through
Right.
the state. But there are circumstances, like I can think of one we had happen in which the phone systems went down. They weren't working.
The town's
basi-
phones.
The town's
town-
phone system, the connective, the
Okay.
PD to the fire. Again, we have radios, we make sure that there are multiple redundancies so that if any of these catastrophic events occur, we're still able to serve the public in the event of an emergency. That being said, this position does work very cooperatively with the state agencies, the police department themselves. And I only know this because I've been seeing a lot of the emails that have been going back and forth relative to setting up the new police station. So Susan, prior to her departure, was working very closely, getting all the telephone systems. She was working with them with the security systems, the keypad systems and all of that. So there is a lot of interaction,
Right.
but it wouldn't be the final or the only person involved in those
Right.
situations.
Right, and that's more the day-to-day setup of
Mhm.
and functioning of, as opposed to something catastrophic.
Mhm.
John makes a good point. I'm not sure if it brings it to a 6 for me, but I guess I understand that there's more connectivity between this technology person and the FD and the PD than perhaps I was aware of. So,
Mhm.
okay, thank you, Diane. Your thoughts?
No, I would probably stand at a 5.
All right, well, I think we may be kind of all over the place on this one. So let me ask for a vote here in terms of how you would rate it. John Ferrara,
At least a 5.5.
Diane,
I would 5 or 5.5. I'm right in there. I wouldn't go
Okay.
with 6.
All right, and given it's the last part of the conversation, I'm still not comfortable that it's a 6, but I would rate it as a 5.5.
Okay.
So let's go with 5.5 there if we're in agreement.
Yes.
Thank you. The next factor is contacts. I think, is this the one that has no, that's supervision. Okay, so contacts refers to the relative importance to the organization of the working relationships required of this position. The contacts can be both internal and external to the organization. It may take a variety of forms: talking face-to-face, on the phone, public appearances, and the media. This factor also assesses who the contacts are, what is the purpose of the contacts, and the importance to the town. Contacts could include, but are not limited to, residents, elected officials, other members of town boards, appointees, co-workers, etc. And these interactions could include advising, coaching, so forth and so on. Common courtesy is expected at all levels, as always. And the ranking system 1 through 6, as always, a 1 is very routine within the immediate area. Basic information is given and received. There are no significant contacts beyond immediate associates. A 3 is frequent and important beyond the immediate associates. Requires tact to discuss problems, act as a resource person, but there's limited responsibility for securing cooperation, some responsibility to persuade, convince, and secure cooperation. A 4 is frequent and important for the purposes of clarifying town procedures, the use of interpersonal skills to clarify the contact's issues to the community, and to communicate. It requires in-depth professional knowledge of the subject being discussed. A 5 is frequent and important, often around a topic of deep personal concern. I always wonder about that, what that refers to. I assume that means personal as it relates to the nature of the job, not people's personal issues. For an individual stakeholder, i.e. a tax abatement, compliance with a state or federal regulation. It requires advanced communication skills, tact, persuasion, presentation skills, and successful resolution will result in the stakeholder feeling respected and heard, even if the ultimate decision goes against the stakeholder's personal interests. Number 6, contacts are vital to the viability of the town. 2 bullet items: the manner and handling of matters that are important to a wide variety and often unaligned group of stakeholders represents a major consideration in the performance of the incumbent's duties. And 2, the contacts require constant maintenance and development to avoid being blindsided by important financial or reputational issues. Tracy, your thoughts?
I wanted to ask Diane where this was ranked previously. If you have that information.
It was a 4.
It was a 4. Okay, that actually makes me feel better. I had it as a 5 only because I was considering the expansion of the communication skills. Not exactly the way it's presented here, tact, persuasion, presentations, but more of more of the informational, providing information to residents and stakeholders. So I did have that as a 5.
Okay. Thank you. With permission, I'm gonna stop my video just for a second because I have to let the dog out.
Important.
Sorry, hang on. I can hear you. You just won't see me for a minute while I'm letting the dog out. Hang on.
Okay.
Rocco, come on.
Who let the dog out?
Do you have to go out? Come on.
What did you have this one as?
Carry on amongst you, please.
What did you have this one classified as, Diane? Were you think?
I was leaning towards a 5, but I definitely don't think it's a 6. Requires advanced communication skills, I think, with the social media piece, as well as communicating with, I think it brings it from a 4 to a 5.
That's exactly what I had in my rationale, so that's good.
Rocco is doing what he always does, being a pain in the butt. So 5, frequent and important, often around a topic of major personal concern for an individual stakeholder. It's funny. The reason I was thinking this is a 5, it connects to the other conversation we're going to be having starting in February, which is the discussion we had around the org chart and the updating of the website, duties, responsibilities, functionality. I can envision a situation where even as we do a better job of articulating what each department's role is, what they're responsible for, it's articulated on the website, we know that not everybody has access to the website. We know that there's a population of the community that will still feel more comfortable walking in the door, or in many cases, placing a call into town hall asking, who's responsible for my tax abatement, and where do I go for dog license, and why isn't this here on the website? Or, I don't know how to use a website. Can somebody direct me in the right place? And Tracy, it seemed to me when you were talking at the beginning of the conversation about how you see the non-technical side of this role, the if you will, the inbound and outbound, that outward facing piece of responsibility where somebody can be sort of the catch-all for, let me direct you to the right resource. Let me help you with a piece of information. If you expect that this person would, I assume, be in that role, the way you described it, then I could see the justification of it going from a 4 to a 5. Is that how you envision it, or?
No, actually, what you described, I see more as the town clerk's role, honestly. What I meant was, instead of, I was looking at it as less of working with the individual and more as getting the information out to the masses. So just as a small example, we, at the Board of Selectmen's meeting Monday night, Tuesday night, they voted a policy document relative to emergency egress off of Plum Island.
Right.
Nobody, unless you were one of the 15 people at the meeting or happened to catch it on the PEG media, people aren't aware of that. There's no notification, and there are quite a number of people that live on Plum Island.
Mhm.
To be able to know, okay, what happened at the meeting, these are the salient points. I'm going to do an email blast. I'm going
Oh, I
to
see.
classify it to the people who are on Plum Island, and I'm going to let them know, hey, policy document enacted, things like that. So, I mean, more on the larger scale.
Right. So communicating with the public at large, the taxpayer community.
Yep.
I misunderstood that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That helps clarify for me. Again, seems to be justification for 5. John Ferrara, your thoughts?
I have a sense of a 5 as well. Just the communication with the outside, the grants that we would go after, and the ability to take advantage of some of those, to coordinate them and reel them in.
Thank you. Diane, other final thoughts, or?
Just as I had said with Tracy, I mean, the communications in terms of the social media piece and alike, I would probably lean towards a 5.
Yeah. And it also speaks to requiring advanced communication skills, tact, persuasion, presentation. At some point in time or another, this person is going to be speaking with virtually everybody in town government, I would think, right up to and including the board as it relates to any technology issues. And so they have to be a very strong, persuasive and tactful communicator. So, okay. So with that, let's vote. Diane,
I'm going with a
your
5.
rating on it is a
5.
5. John Ferrara
5.
and Mark Blackman, 5 as well. Thank you. Now we have supervision, which is broken into two sections. Supervision in terms of the nature of the supervision, which is, what are the supervisory responsibilities? How many employees are supervised, which is the second category, that's the scope. What is the character of the supervision considers the degree and nature of a position's supervisory responsibilities. Obviously, if there are no supervisory responsibilities, then no points are awarded. The scope refers to the number of employees. So with that in mind, in terms of character,
Yeah, I had that one as a 5.
5 is general management may have supervision over a department or several units within the same department performing similar work, may have subordinate supervisors. A 4 is supervises positions performing related work. Responsibilities include recruitment, training, coaching, prioritizing, allocating, completing performance appraisals, recommending terminations, etc. Positions supervised generally perform related work. Tracy, help me understand why you have it as a 5 versus a 4.
The reason I put it as a 5 was because of the addition of having IT and then adding PEG, adding the second department under the supervisory role.
Mhm.
And although it would be only supervising one at this point, there are a lot of people that come and go that we contract with to tape certain events. We work with Port Media. We've worked with them in the past, and now we're going to be bringing all these interns in as well.
Okay. Thank you. John Farrar, your thoughts?
Well, I would agree. It sounds like the position, he or she is a lone ranger. And the sole employee, I think that Tracy's talking about, is Ethan Cohen.
Yes.
But keep in mind that as they go across the board to all of the departments, this person is going to have supervisory requirements, though it be tertiary, for people not under his or her command, but working for the locations that that person's going to have responsibility for, and then all the third-party people that come into the play, the outsiders that consult with the town and help with the IT and the equipment aspects. I mean, that's supervisory in itself, even though they don't work for the town of Newbury.
Mm-hmm. So supervisory on kind of an ad hoc or a project basis?
Yes, every time they go into the Council on Aging or the fire department or the police department or Public Works and supervise and train their direct component folks to do all of the IT stuff for the parochial location. That's even though they don't work for the IT, it's a collaborative aspect and it's direct supervision.
Mhm.
Even though it's not a command decision, but it's a project supervision.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, John. I think that's why over the years we've separated out the character, the nature of the supervisory role versus the number of people employed. So here's a situation where on a project basis, this person will be responsible for supervising the end result of other people's activities, even though they don't directly report to this individual. But when it comes to the second factor, which is the number of employees, then we have to stay focused exclusively on who's reporting into this individual in the org chart. So, okay, good. So you see it as a 5 in that capacity in terms of the character. Diane, how about you in terms of the character or the nature of the supervisory?
So I was sort of between a 4 and a 5. And I looked back at what it was previously. It was a 3. Now I understand that the role has obviously grown since 2016, but I also look at what other factors for other positions, and it's sort of all over the map. And it just could be, because some of these other positions haven't been, looked at again. But I think I would lean towards a 4.5. I know we're splitting hairs at this point, but supervisors positions performing related work. Positions supervised generally perform related work. Subordinate supervisors, I don't know if it's a similar situation to like a, chief of police or director of inspectional services. So I'm somewhere between a 4 and a 5. That's just, I think we're going to pick up on the other end, Tracy, in terms of the number of employees, because obviously we're adding an entire program, if you will, under that. So I think you're going to pick up with the number of employees that this person will supervise, but I would be somewhere between a 4 and a 5.
Yeah, okay. I'm not sure of that last point, but we'll get to that in a second. I would agree with Diane. I'm also not quite at a 5. I think we have to look at both I think we have to look at the spirit of the language. And Tracy, I understand your point. It says under 5, general management says may have supervision over a department or several units within the same department performing similar work. I think by the letter of that law, if you will, I think you're right. But I think this, in terms of the spirit of the way that's written, I think it was written to suggest that somebody would have probably greater degree of responsibility than, one individual in sort of a subset of that department. That's my take. And I would agree with Diane. I'm probably more comfortable in the 4.5 range here. Any final thoughts before we take a vote on it?
Nope.
Just
Okay,
the idea that overseas is a strong word. All of the training for all of the departments, for all of the personnel that touch and delve into IT matters. So it just carries with it a responsibility.
Yeah, I just don't know how often, like we talked about earlier, I don't know if that's, no question that occurs, especially if new software is being rolled out or if the use of new hardware is required. But I guess I'm questioning whether that's done with enough frequency as opposed to, once a year or twice a year. Tracy, help me with that.
Oh, no, that happens often. The new software and rollouts and training, that happens frequently.
It does.
Yeah.
So would you say that on a fairly regular basis, this person has responsibility for kind of overseeing the end result of lots of other employees, even though they don't report into this individual in terms of they're getting everything squared away? Or
Yeah, I can't think of a time when there wasn't a software rollout going on, whether it's upgrades or, we're updating our Microsoft, or we're changing softwares for inspectional services. Right now, we're evaluating bringing in a new scheduling system for Parks and Recreation. There's always something changing and upgrading and training. That's library, COA, there's always something happening.
Right. I guess I'm just hung up on that, maybe on the use of the word supervisory here. And I know it's a little funky in terms of this role, but in your mind, you see this person, again, quote unquote, supervising the other non-technical staff in their acceptance of, the adoption of, rollout of all this software and technology.
Yeah, absolutely, she would be supervising them and directing them. But that being said, I'm anywhere between a 4 and a 5. I'm comfortable with.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. We're sort of betwixt and between here. So let's take it to a vote. Diane, how would you vote?
4.5.
John Ferrara?
I'm going to say 5.
Okay, and I'm going to say 4.5. Thank you. And now we get to supervisory scope. This factor ranks the number of positions supervised. We have 3 types of positions: full-time, part-time, and temporary. All positions are prorated to full-time equivalents. When calculating FTEs, full-time equivalents, the evaluator must know the normal schedule hours of the work. That may not apply in this case, but so we know that this person will supervise a staff of one directly, Ethan.
Yep.
Okay. And then we have, again, letter of versus spirit of the law here. As we've already identified that this person on a, fairly regular basis is responsible for supervising the activities of and results of the other staff to adopt and properly utilize this technology. So this is an unusual one for a subcommittee. We don't normally get faced with this kind of a, I mean, look, there are more than 15 employees in town hall, but I don't think we can rate it as a 6, as it relates to when you would consider how other people are rated a 6 in terms of the, police chief number of staff, or Tracy, her number of staff. That's my opinion. I'm not sure that would be good faith. So Diane, John, thoughts on how we should rate this?
I'm gonna go with a 2. That's where I'm gonna that's my gut check, 3 to 5 people. Again, I'm looking back at what it was prior, which is a 1.
Mhm.
And I look at the gamut of what everybody else is at, and I don't think it rises to anything greater than at least a 3. I'm gonna land at a 2.
John Ferrari, your thoughts?
Well, again, the sense is that there is no direct supervision for employees working for the position, other than Ethan, and so the element is whatever the rankings are, 1, 2. Again, the interplay, the oversight, overseeing so many employees at so many different locations. It's a gray area. It's foggy. They don't report directly to that office, but they are probably taking an awful lot of direction, as if that was for the project, the day, the event. That individual is going to be the boss of me, and basically,
And that's why I kept going back to frequency here. To me, this is an important one. So
Yes,
as an example, two thoughts. And a question and a thought, I should say. So Tracy, if you think about the norm here, new software gets rolled out, or new technology package, tell us what that looks like. And by that, I mean, would this person be responsible for bringing in, 3 to 5 people at a time, the finance department, and then DPW or the PD? In other words, would this person have a group responsibility at any one time to oversee or direct the activities of 1 to 2 people at a time, 3 to 5 people at a time, 6 to 7 people at a time in a project like this?
I would say 3 to 5 for, just to provide you an example. So Susan, we have a permit link software program that we use for our inspectional services. Susan wrote a grant and got additional funding to purchase the conservation permitting software. She is, obviously she starts with writing the grant, so she secures the funds. She evaluates the programs, finds the program that will work, determines the interconnectivity with the program that we already have, then sets up the installation, brings it on board. She's working collaboratively with the building inspector, the conservation agent, the administrative position in the department. Then she schedules, she learns how to use it. Then she schedules the training. Most of the software companies will have an individual that will conduct a preliminary training, but then she's the person that they're in-house they're going to be going to for getting answers to their questions. So she's involved from beginning to end. In
Gotcha.
that example, there's 3. We just put a new phone system in at the fire department. She had them all there to,
Yeah. Okay.
teach them how to utilize it. So I guess
Right.
it's different circumstances
Okay.
depending on what's.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Well, again, this is one where I think we have to look at both the letter and the spirit of, and try to be consistent with what we did in the other factor here. The other factor of supervisor in terms of the character of it. I could see it being anywhere between a 2 and 3 as well. I mean, there's no defined number of people at any one time, but it's clear that on a regular basis, this person is responsible for supervising the end result, even though he or she doesn't supervise or manage these people 35 hours a week, every week. And I think, to be fair, we want to take that into consideration. So I would say it's somewhere between a 2 and a 3. Final thoughts? If not, we'll vote on it.
I still am recommending a 2 from a straight supervisory role. I think that the interactions and cooperation of other people that she's working with to accomplish, whether it's training of software, et cetera, is probably more handled in the contact section. Persuasive, work together with. But if I look at this straight from a supervisory role, I would feel comfortable with a 2.
The 2 being because on a regular basis, there are anywhere between 3 and 5 people that
Yes.
this person is responsible for making sure they get the job done.
Yes.
Okay, understood. Thank you. John, your thoughts? I'm sorry. So Diane, you're voting it as a 2.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, John?
I would agree with Diane. I mean, she has a better handle on it. I still see the nuance as pushing it toward a 3, but I'll live with a 2.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think it's a 2 as well. I think we might be able to justify a 3, but what we don't want is any pushback that we took too much license in a case like this. So I think a 2 is fine. So, okay, we are agreed on a 2. Thank you. Physical demands. We talked about crawling earlier. This one pretty straightforward. I think we all understand what physical demands are. A 1 is no undue fatigue, a variety of activities, including sitting, standing, walking. Visual, this is key here, visual concentration, and we've defined that as looking at a screen all day. Visual concentration is less than 20% of the time. We know that wouldn't be the case here. A 2 is, some fatigue, visual concentration 20 to 50% of the time on a screen, sitting or standing at the workstation. A 3 is moderate fatigue with greater than 50% of the time in front of a computer screen and or other physical exertion activities. 4 is frequent fatigue, which is the amount of physical effort with limited opportunities to rest. Fatigue occurs daily, considerable moving, standing, heavy physical effort, lifting, pulling, repetitive, strenuous fatigue. And 6 is extended, strenuous physical work. Thoughts?
I marked this as a 3 and then put a little plus sign for crawling. So maybe 3.5.
What, for crawling?
Yeah. Just the 3 doesn't really talk about a lot of the things that we discussed earlier, the crawling under desks,
Right.
those types of things. So I just gave it a 3+.
Yeah. Thank you. A 3, by the way, here are the 4 bullet items under 3. 1 is frequent moving about and some heavy lifting, pulling, pushing heavy or awkward objects. 2 is involves activities that cause moderate physical exertion or fatigue, such as sitting and or standing in a fixed position for long periods of time. 3 is visual concentration of greater than 50% of the time at a screen. And 4 is requires extended periods of time sitting or standing. It would seem to me that at least 3, if not all 4 of those bullet items are in play here. My thoughts, it would be a 3. Diane, your thoughts?
I would have it as a 3.
Okay. John Ferrara, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm managing all the physical moves from office equipment on outward. A 3 seems reasonable. I did have one question in some of the description. What does it mean where that individual office is responsible for all building and individual office security? That's a rather broad requirement.
Which, I'm sorry.
Do we have a canine vote?
That's Rocco. He's saying hello.
Hey, buddy.
Rocco, be a good boy. Be good.
Where are you referring to, John?
We're just in the job description. I put a big note on that, and it hasn't come up as of duties and responsibilities. And what does that mean? Responsible for all building and individual office security?
Okay, what, this
I had
is
that flag.
another opportunity where, in our current location, Susan was very effective in getting grant funding for us to be able to implement panic buttons in the individual offices. We've been fortunate. I think we've only, in the 10 years I've been here, I think we've only needed to use them maybe twice. Was it probably in the tax collector's office, Diane? I think once in the assessor's office, where we all have panic buttons that will contact the PD directly. We also have she also implemented security code buttons in the 2 floors, so we know who's in the building, when they're in the building. We have security cameras now. So when the security, when someone accesses the work site, we know who's there, we know when they're there, we could see them on the video cameras. A lot of times, you know, individual department managers will be in here on the weekends or in here, you know, late at night, things like that. Susan had access, video and access to all the facilities and who was in them, with the exception of PD. There was no access to that. That's monitored individually. And we also got it set up, I should have also told you, so that dispatch, public safety dispatch also sees what she would see.
As a group, the HR department, Diane being the lady of the watch, it's always been our disdain that women leave that building in the dark, and so nobody leaves the parking lot until Diane's underway.
Right.
And I should
Right.
tell you, our police department's been wonderful. We have generally two offices, one in each sector. And if I happen to be here late at night, or Martha Taylor, the planner, is, we just give a call to dispatch. We let them know we're going to be leaving at 10:15, and they send the sector car to kind of just take a ride through the parking lot. So we always feel very safe.
Great. Thank you. John, was that able to answer your questions?
Yes, it did.
Okay,
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you. So without any, if there's no further discussion, let's vote on this. Diane?
We're in physical demands?
Yep.
Yep.
3.
3. John
I
Ferrara?
agree with the 3.
Mark Leckman, 3. Thank you. And working conditions. One is agreeable, few disadvantages, standard office environment. 2 is there may be some disadvantages. Environment can be noisier or dirtier than normal, like an enclosed office located near a shop or a loading dock. Bothersome odors may be present, may require occasional outdoor work. 3 is mostly agreeable. Some minor disadvantages: heat, cold, humidity, dirt, oil, noise, noxious odors, other uncomfortable elements. Potential hazards may be there, radioactive materials. Not sure if we have to get beyond that, do we? Regular exposure to disagreeable elements? I don't think so. Tracy, your thoughts?
I had 2.5.
Ooh.
Okay, rationale there?
Well, again, I've seen some of the facilities that she has to work within. I've seen her, you know, lugging, carrying, that she has a what do you call it? A dolly.
A dolly, yeah.
Loading, unloading, you know, in and out of her car.
Right.
Again, the under the desk, the crawling, the working in less than ideal circumstances. Granted, that's not 50% of her time.
Yep.
But it, you know,
Tracy, if
I
I
would
may,
consider it mostly agreeable with some disadvantages, but
yeah,
that's
I'm
me.
curious. You mentioned earlier in the conversation about that IT room in the basement of the subflooring of the PD.
Yep.
Is that, will this person be responsible for that location for the
Absolutely.
foreseeable future?
Absolutely. Yep. That's
And
where
that's not-
everything is housed. That's where the brain
Right.
is housed for
And
everything.
that's not a picnic down there, fair to say.
It's not what?
It's not a picnic down there,
No, no,
fair
no,
to say.
no.
Okay, that might bump it up to a 6. I don't know. Okay, so your thoughts were between a 2 and a 3. Is that what you said, Tracy? Okay.
Yes.
Diane, your thoughts?
I would say no more than a 2.
I'm sorry, no more than a 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I look at, it was a 1. I mean, it's standard, office environment with some exceptions. I look at a couple other positions like town planner, principal assessor, and those are both at a 2. I wouldn't necessarily see that rising to anything above a 2.
And those people are responsible for the occasional outdoor activity, less than ideal circumstances?
Except the only, well, I would say assessor, yes, but he's physically outside inspecting the
Yep.
parcels and everything. Susan is out of the office, I would say at least 2 to 3 days a week at one of our other sites, whether it's library, that site isn't disagreeable, certainly, but
Right.
she'll be bouncing around between library, fire, police. She's constantly, moving. I don't think of it like a work environment like we have. You come
Yeah,
in,
okay.
you sit at your desk, you're warm, you're cool,
Right.
whatever.
Well, I'm focused, the only thing I'm focused on is that disagreeable element below the police station. So what is the frequency? Because to me, even though she's out of the office and all these other locations, they're all acceptable
They're all
standard
fine.
locations. So how frequently would you think this person would need to go over to that underneath the police station building that we know was at one point either condemned or close to it, and
I'd
it was pretty
say,
rotten over there.
I'd say at least once every other week.
Okay. That feels to me like a 2.5. I'm not sure the frequency would bring it up to a 3, but I could see it. There's enough exposure over there in a very unpleasant environment that I could justify a 2.5. Other thoughts, or should we vote on it? All right, let's vote. Diane?
I mean, I'm leaning towards a 2, but I can see the
Okay.
argument for 2.5, but I'm leaning towards a 2.
Okay, 2 for Diane. John Ferrara?
The dolly brought me to 2.5.
Well, remember, the dolly really should have been just prior
Makes
to
it
this, right?
easier.
Yeah, right. So, all right, so John, 2.5. I would agree with the 2.5. Okay, thank you. And that ends the factors. The only thing we look at now is, other considerations, which include the volume of the work,
Mark,
confident.
could I just
Yes.
interrupt 1 second? I think, are there any factors that anyone wants to go back to visit? Because I
sorry.
actually do have one that I sort of, the more I sat with it, I wasn't really sure. The independent action, we were somewhere between a 5.5 and a 6.
Yep.
And I think you and I were both at a 5.5, and Tracy and John were leaning towards a 6, or the other way. I think that I'd like to go back and change my mind to a 5.5.
I thought you said that's where you and I both were at a 5.5.
Yeah, or
It was a 6,
6.
independent action.
Okay. I think I'm more leaning towards a 5.5.
And I'm sorry, how did each of us vote on that?
I don't mark how each one votes, but I just,
Okay.
I think, I mean, you can certainly keep going. I just, with a couple of factors later, I was starting to think I might have probably reconsidered my decision.
John Ferrara, your thoughts?
I think my memory was, I have it noted here as a 6.
And I apologize, I don't know where I was on that, but my thinking hasn't changed, whatever it was. So if Diane, Diane, you're saying you're changing your vote from what it had been to
Yeah,
now
I think it was 2
5.5?
against 1, and I think afterwards I was leaning more towards a 5.5.
We're talking about the independent operating.
I think so. You can keep going. I should have marked down who voted which way, but one of those a couple of factors later, I was thinking maybe we rated it too high. Or maybe it was consequence of errors. I don't remember. There was one that we were sort of on the fence, but you can
Right.
keep going.
Okay, okay.
Where did we end on working conditions? I apologize. Was it 2 or 2.5?
2.5.
2.5.
Thank you.
Okay. And then lastly, we've got other considerations that we look at to see how, if at all, they might impact. And again, you know, the assumption we make is that many of these jobs have a tremendous volume of work. So that's, you know, we don't give any extra points for that. Of course, roles require confidentiality. We don't necessarily give extra points for something like that unless it's very unusual. Accuracy required, standard stuff. Duties assumed, standard stuff. Level of supervisor's position probably wouldn't apply here. Technical terminology may or may not be a factor here. We've already talked about the importance of this person's technological chops. So this is not an incumbent situation. I don't think this is any more or less stressful. The only thing I'm looking at here that might be a factor is market recruitment, evaluating the role as it relates to what the candidate pool is. If you recall, in the past, what we've done is we've listed, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Diane, I never can remember whether it goes from a 1 to a 2 to a 3 or a 3 to a 2 to a 1 in terms of the importance that we place on it. So
So-
what a 17.1 versus a 17 with a 17.3 versus a 1, meaning it's harder to find these people?
So 1 is there are plenty of them. 2 is it's kind of the norm, and 3 is it's highly specialized. So
Okay.
for example, the assistant finance director landed at a 0.3
Yeah,
because of the technical and the experience and the
Right.
depth of the position. So, you know, what that would be something Tracy would need to speak to as far as, you know, how many resumes, you know, is this a plentiful, can you find candidates to fill this? Or is it a really specialized field that you are struggling to find 1 or 2 people that are qualified?
I got a tremendous response upon detailed review of many of the candidates. However, the majority of them were under the impression they could do the job remotely. They were in Texas and Mexico and China and, you know, from all over the place. So once I kind of weeded it down to a smaller pool, many of them had the criteria to meet what we're looking at, but few of them had direct municipal experience. And the only reason I make a differentiation between the public and the private sector in this role, although some of the duties and responsibilities are very similar, adding PEG access, adding communications, those types of things you would not typically find in an IT specialist
Yeah.
outside of a municipal setting. You
Right.
know,
The only thing I would bear in mind here, though, is that, and we've certainly come away from these meetings recommending to managers that they tweak the job description.
Mhm.
If you feel that strongly, you may want to tweak this because there is not a bullet item that says municipal experience preferred.
I know.
And so in my mind, just the nature of the technology required in the role makes it in terms of the geography as well, makes it a limited pool. We know that people in these roles on the outside typically are making considerably more. So that
Yes.
limits the pool in terms of what the resources are we have available. And
Mhm.
two, the degree of technical education required in the role, to me, would suggest that it's a 0.3. I'd like to know how other people feel about that. John Ferrara?
Why don't we have a bullet that says municipal experience preferred? I mean, with
We should.
the exodus of so many of the large villages in the Commonwealth, the idea of somebody coming to a quieter place, the North Shore, Essex County, Newbury, Topsfield, Byfield, it just in a short commute up 95. I would think that would be an attraction, and then the salary just comes down to a negotiation, depending on whether this person is choked with education and IT experience and master's degree,
Right.
et cetera. I'm assuming
Right.
that once the person is identified and the credentials are weighed, I mean, literally down to the ounce, then the salary is determined, or is this set in stone regardless?
Well, let's see where it sits within the classification, then we'll look at that against the candidate pool. We don't know yet.
Yeah, exactly. How many?
Diane, your thoughts? Your
many
thoughts about it? I'm
candidates-
sorry. So John, did you finish your thought about whether it should be a 0.2 or 0.3 or?
I don't know how to classify that. It's just my sense. I just wanted to get a question in that
Okay.
talks about change the invitation. Get a bullet in there saying that municipal experience would, because it's a different genre.
It
It's
is.
dealing with, especially when you're dealing with, we don't have a town manager, we don't have a mayor, we have a select board and all that
Right.
that implies. And the complication, for somebody coming out of a major corporate entity with all of the strict protocol set in stone, comes up and sits down in front of the Board of Selectmen for the town of Newbury, they'd be on a lithium regimen within an hour.
Okay. Diane, your thoughts about the candidate pool and whether we want to use this additional factor as a 1, 2, or 3 here?
Well, it doesn't sound like Tracy's had a problem with the response.
No.
So I would probably lean towards a 2. I think there's only a couple of very isolated instances where we jump it to a 3. The assistant finance director, accountant being one of them, and the principal assessor.
Yep.
Which, again, I understand the IT director is specialized, but I don't think, Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, those roles are very experience driven and education driven, where someone that has both the level of education as well as the experience, there are plentiful of people. I think the IT director, you probably are more in a situation where you'd have more than 1 or 2 candidates that really meet the criteria. So I would lean towards a 2.
I agree
Point
with
well
your
taken.
assessment.
Yep.
I agree with that.
Point-
I would
point
put
well
it
taken.
at a 2 as well.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
it's much, much more difficult for me to find someone versed in municipal fund accounting as a town accountant than it is. The pool for that position, I think I got 2 applications. This one, I think I got over 30. And
Right.
even
So
narrowing,
if,
yep, I'm
sorry,
sorry.
I'm sorry. So
Even
if-
narrowing it down to those that had more relevant municipal experience or state experience, I had about, I think, 7 or 8. So,
yeah, good point. So if the bullet item said municipal experience required, that's a different matter, but we're not requiring it here, so 2. Okay, makes sense. Well, if there's no further discussion, let's vote on whether we want to make this a factor of 1, 2, or 3. Diane, yeah, I'm sorry, you had your hand raised?
No, that's fine. If that's what you're going to take a vote on.
Yeah.
I had a couple of other comments before we go to what the rating actually is.
Okay,
Um,
Diane,
but-
let's
I'm
vote
fine
on
with
whether this is a 1,
Yep,
a 2.
yes.
Okay, John Ferrara
2.
and Mark Leckman a 0.2 as well. Okay, that finishes the factors. Thank you all.
does that bring us to 44, Diane?
Bring us what?
to 44, the total?
40. Oh, well, it's multiplied by a weight factor, so I have that. But I just want to speak to one thing because I think, again, we just want to go back to a gut check on how it sits within the organization.
Yep.
So speaking to the two factors I think that I was sort of, again, reconsidering are experience and independent action. We rated experience at a 4.5, and we have experience for the accountant assistant finance director at a 4. So are you,
I'm
sorry?
comfortable with that.
And then the independent action, we have this position, the IT director at a 6, and we have the assistant accountant, the accountant finance director at a 5. So I just like to go back and revisit and see where they land within the scope of sort of where the position's tending to look like it's landing. And I can give you the total rating and I can tell you where it lands, but before I do that, is there any adjustments that you want to make relative to experience and independent action as it relates to sort of other positions within the town?
Speaking for myself, I don't feel compelled to do that. I think we recognize often when we do these classifications that it's not a perfect science, and that we're not always going to be able to effectively line up in a classification rating how Tracy or any person in a leadership role might look at each one of those roles independently.
Mhm.
I think that we have to sort of build in a little bit of elasticity here, for lack of a better word. So I know we were on the edge on a couple of them, but I'm comfortable keeping the ratings that we've put in place.
Okay.
John Ferrari, your thoughts?
I think I'm not interested in trying to nuance between one position or another. You're right, it's not a science, it's an art.
Yep.
And
Okay, thank you. Diane, any final thoughts before you give us the classification?
I just know that it's right on the cusp between one rating and another. Usually it feels very comfortable when we're in the midpoint of a range, and
Right.
so we feel like, okay, we've landed somewhere in the ballpark of what makes sense. I can tell you that this one is landing very close to on the cusp. So I just want to make sure that we, are comfortable with what we've rated so far.
So where did it land?
So it's landed at a 477.5, which puts it on par with the fire chief and the chief of police. And it's right on the cusp. The next grouping down would be the director of inspectional services and principal assessor, deputy police chief, director of public works.
So what, in terms of the grade, what grade is that, Diane?
It puts it above a 19.2. So it puts it above town planner, public works director, director of inspectional services, and above principal assessor.
Tracy, comfort level there?
I don't feel uncomfortable with it. I mean, in terms of technical expertise, I think
Again, it's on par with town administrator, police chief, and fire chief.
now you say that, but town administrator, police chief, and fire chief are 20s.
Right, so what I'm saying is it's over the threshold by a 0.5 factor.
Just part of it.
I'm purely
Okay.
having the discussion of it falling within the organization.
What's the number? 19.3?
19 point, it's above a 19.2, so it's
19.2,
above. So
Well,
it's,
what do you mean above?
so it falls within the 20.2 range. It's 471 and above.
Well, if it's 471 and above, then it's not a 19.2.
No, I was saying above a 19.2. It's above 471, which puts it at a 20.2.
Above 471 is a 20.2. I thought you said
Right.
it was a 19.2.
I said
No,
above
it's
it.
above it.
Okay.
It was above it. Okay.
So I just want to make sure that you feel that within the organizational chart, and that's why I was looking back at some of these things that we were 0.5 above or 0.5, so I want to just bring it to your attention that you look at how it sits within the organization in terms of, a 1.5 factor puts it back within principal assessor, town planner, many other department heads that have significant responsibilities. But I'm just putting it out there for you to review.
Can I
each-
interject
so-
here real quick?
Yes.
And I say this in advance with apologies. We've gone way over what I expected to be the little time. I've got a commitment that's going to require me to stop here in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
And so I apologize here. So this may be a conversation we need to put on hold for a moment.
Okay.
Unless Tracy feels we can have a quick solution here. I mean, as I said earlier, and I meant it, I was comfortable with each of the individual ratings. As I say that, I can honestly say I'm not completely comfortable that this is rated in the same ballpark as the TA, fire chief and police chief and the classification. It doesn't feel right to me, even though on an individual factor basis, I could justify my decisions. And so
Right.
as an individual, I would not be comfortable signing off on this today. And so I guess I would ask, unless anyone has a strong objection, that we sort of hold our final decision here and let Tracy maybe chew on this for a day or so, and we can try to reconvene as quickly as possible, or?
The only reason I'm anxious is because I've got someone on hold waiting to make an offer to. But I think with your guidance, if, looking at what we've just spoken about, the difference between 470 and 471, I'm acknowledging what you're saying now, Diane. I'm sorry, I wasn't
That's okay.
getting it. But clearly, I think this position coming in between a 19.2 or a 19.3, that difference that you just discussed, I'm very comfortable with, as
Yes.
long as I leave this meeting knowing there's some movement within the 19.2 and the 20 that it actually came to. That
Right.
will give me the guidance I need to move forward with our offer.
Yes.
And because I've got a candidate waiting too, and we're a little bit under the gun to get someone.
What
on
exactly are
board.
we saying here? I'm unclear.
I need to know what range I can work within for.
No, that part I understand. I guess my question for Diane is, does this require us to make any edits down to where we were? Or?
Well, I think, again, there were a couple that we were on the fence, and again, by 0.5. I mean, it wasn't, we could have easily landed one or the other. And I think the gut check that I always bring to the attention at the very, very end is looking at how it fits within the structure of the
Yeah,
organization.
right.
And to me, I can't see it as an on par with the TA like you. I think it easily falls within the grouping of managers, principal assessor, director of inspectional services, public works director, town planner. I see it on par with that. And I think if we were to go back and adjust one factor that we may have been on the fence with, we can make a decision today that allows Tracy to move forward,
Okay,
and we
I
can
got
all
it.
feel.
I would agree with that. I would
Okay,
agree with that, by the way. I don't know if I misspoke or if you misheard. I do not consider this to be at
Okay.
the same level as the TA or the police chief or the fire chief, in my mind.
so again, I come back to those, again, gut check, I look at everybody else that's in that range when it comes to experience and independent action. And I think
Right.
0.5 in one of those, which we sort of were on the edge, puts
Okay.
it back within the range of what we're looking for it to sort
Got
of, or where we see
So-
it comfortably as a gut
I
check
understand.
sit within the
So
organization.
what are those two factors again? Independent action, and what's the other one?
Experience at 4.5 and independent action as a 6.
experience at 4.5, and independent action as a 6.
And so I will just tell you, experience for the assistant finance director accountant is a 4.
Yeah.
Independent action, where she's at a 5.
Yeah,
So
I
both
would
of
be more
those-
comfortable. I would be more comfortable bumping down the independent action piece than the experience piece.
Okay,
That's my take.
I think
John, your
that
thoughts?
was the one that when I was sort of saying I was on the fence, I was leaning towards a 5.5.
And I remember our conversation. That was where we had the most conversation.
Yes.
Whether it was a 5.5 or 6. John, your thoughts on that?
Clearly, what got us to the 477.5 were the weighting factors.
Yes,
We don't know what those weighting factors are. You have them in front of you.
I do.
So basically,
So a half a point, really going from a 6 to a 5.5 puts it at 470, which makes it the 19.2.
happy with going with that if that keeps the house in order. I agree. We want to make sure that the town administrator is not on a par with somebody who's reporting to her.
Okay,
So are you
I-
comfortable moving
Yes.
down to the 5.5 and the independent action? Is that what you're saying, John?
Yes, I am.
All right,
And
then let's re-vote on that one then.
Yep.
If that's okay for everyone.
yes,
Comfortable,
Diane
Tracy?
Doyle, independent action.
yes,
John, so at a 5.5.
Yay,
John Ferrara, independent action, 5.5.
yes.
And Mark Leckman, yes.
okay. That puts it at a 470 and a 19.2.
Okay.
Good.
And that gives you your guidance, Tracy?
it does. Thank you very much for
Okay.
the extra
You're
time.
very welcome.
Can I make
Thank
one
you.
last, Mark, I know you need to leave.
I got to scoot.
All right,
I got to scoot.
I would make the recommendation that we change it to IT communications manager, period, take out the program.
Okay,
I'm fine with that. That's
Got
that's bookkeeping. Okay.
Okay.
Agreed. John Ferrara?
I agree with that. I actually looked that up earlier when Diane
Okay.
first brought it up and went
Got
on to
it.
alternatives.
Thank you all. I appreciate everyone's time. I'm sorry the
I
time.
make
took
the
to do
motion that we adjourn the meeting.
this. Is there a second?
Second,
Any discussion?
thank you all.
Oh,
We're
Thank you.
voting. We're voting. Diane Doyle,
yes,
John Ferrara,
yes.
Mark Leckman, yes. Thank you all. Have a good weekend. Stay warm, and we'll see everybody Monday morning.
Take care.
thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.